After the failed red wave that never materialized, Joe Biden can exhale as the red wave had ran dry, but he says he can't wait for Trump to Satanist grudge match, which we don't want either of that because we don't want Trump or the Satanist in any type of basically presidential office ever again. Um, it begins with a simple question: would you want to hold public office? Now, this year's elections make clear that the overwhelming majority of us say no, and we all know the reason and why. Most politicians fucking suck so bad, and nobody worth a shit wants the job, or at least a few do. But of course, the opposite may be true, but maybe we're all full of shit and politicians do represent the best of us. Now, I'm an optimist, however. I think that there are a lot of people worth a shit who don't want to be involved in politics at all, and the same can be said of the press. We attract the best and brightest in a certain sense, but we're a First Amendment necessity that makes democracy possible. It's a potentially exciting profession being on the front lines, witnessing and reporting on history and what we're seeing. But there's no money in all that, folks. So the modern press is nothing more than a money weather vane. But it's nothing more than a money weather vane. Wherever we find the most money, we will be there. And, and since we're worried about budgets and bottom lines, we don't waste a lot of money hiring decent reporters. Posers, yes. Ignorant, yes. But if we get a good hire these days, it's usually by accident or mistake. So but in both cases, the high caliber people often avoid these arenas because of money. You have to grovel for it to run for office, and you don't get paid much of it, but you're a member of the press. Both careers still attract people who are ambitious and committed, but committed to fucking what? I have no fucking idea. We can't field candidates better than high school reprobates, and reporters can't report facts worth a fucking damn, but they can produce fiction at an alarming rate. You cannot have a functioning democracy without a well-informed electorate, and now you know why politicians don't want you to be well-informed. As George, a famous George Carlin quote, as he pointed out, was the politicians they want you just smart enough to run the machines. Now, watching them reporting on this year's midterm elections, as Brian Kareem has done every election since 1984, it's a unique experience for too many reasons to mention. But underlying all of it is a sense of tiredness among an electorate that knows nothing, that knows something is wrong, but because of our voting record in the last half century, we haven't learned what the fuck that is. As a result of our inability to grasp the obvious, we are now in the middle of several fights we thought were over. The dark times are there. We're making life what it was again in the 1950s, as Norm Ornstein said on Trump's show Tuesday night. We're fighting for civil rights, women's rights, voters' rights, and minority rights all over again. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis announced from Florida Tuesday night that Florida is where wokeism goes to fucking die. He said it with the zeal of a Christian zealot who claims he's a prophet from God, which he's not, or at least a prophet who comes to profit. And for you zealots out there, remember your gospel according to Matthew. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Or in some cases, beware of the bully who wields power for his own benefit by exploiting you. Watching Donald Trump and DeSantis taking each other on in a potential race for the 2024 Republican nomination will be like watching two shoeless mud wrestlers beating each other in the head while rolling around in the muck, and I can't say that it won't be entertaining. Now, either way, if it's a horse race, we'll cover it. With the lack of experience in today's press, that's about the only thing left that we can cover. And as this midterm election shows, we can't even get that right. The polls were wrong. The reporting was shallow and driven by politicians, and issues were ignored. Issues should drive coverage, not polls, and we haven't figured that out yet. And we're still stuck wallowing in the mud, as people would say with the politicians. And we're loving the horse race because we have devolved into being barely capable of anything else. Now, Steve Bannon in the media is the battleground, and he's not fucking wrong. He's a craven coward, but he's not wrong, and we continue to fail at doing that job, therefore making the battle more problematic and a greater threat to democracy than it reasonably ought to be. One thing that's abundantly clear, and from the midterm elections, is that we need better politicians and better reporters. If Herschel Walker, Lauren Bolbich, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Jim Jordan and the pedophile Matt Gaetz can run for office, then the bar is fucking low enough for anyone to do it. Now give it a try. I trust a crack-dealing Wiccan before I trust Lauren Boebert. Now the midterms, as it turns out, reflected what many of us already knew. We remain a divided nation. Few politicians are trying to resolve that particular problem, and many in the press have no idea how we can contribute to it. And no matter what, and there's no time for reflection, Joe Biden, who hasn't had a press conference in the White House in 10 months, decided he would have a press conference to address the midterms on Wednesday. Tuesday had been a light day there, with staffers sitting around munching on pizza and furtively glancing about, anxiously speculating on the Democrats and their candidates. Now Wednesday morning comes. The staff was hopeful. Tim Ryan's loss in Ohio, along with Sarah Fatfuck Sanders' win in Arkansas, gave them cause for concern, but everyone seemed to be enraptured with the possible defeat of Bo Bitch, who, as of Thursday morning, had trailed her Democratic opponent by fewer than 100 votes, in the slowly dawning realization that there had been no red wave. In short, the West Wing was in far better spirits. Now the question is, which party will lead Congress? Probably won't be settled for days, but the current administration decided, even with the things being undecided, that the fact Democrats hadn't gotten slaughtered in the midterms made a presidential victory lap inevitable. Earlier on in the morning, it was obvious the White House staffers were as giddy as a teen on nitrous oxide, but it became obvious that the president joined his staff in the elation when he agreed to meet with reporters in the press conference from the state dining room. Standing near the infamous brooding portrait of Abraham Lincoln, Biden spoke for about an hour. He wasn't exactly his high energy self, but he wasn't boring either. Now, Biden's press conference exposed the best and the worst of both his administration and the White House press corps. Just 10 people were handpicked to ask him questions, but we encouraged him, when interrupted his reading of the card of handpicked reporters, to stick around and take a few more from the rest of us who weren't chosen. He smiled and laughed and then declined, saying that he had to make some phone calls. Now, Biden's first press conference in 10 months was restricted, shallow, and with a few exceptions, and it was devoid of meaning. He reread his speech. He acted presidential. He smiled. He made a few jokes. The press played along for the most part, but part of it was that we've also been so starved for direct information from from the president that those few reporters who got the chance to ask a question had to cover a lot of ground. Now, the difference between Biden and Trump was never more apparent than it was in his answer to one question. After Trump lost the midterm in 2018, Trump was asked whether, knowing that impeachment was likely coming and that he could put that aside and work with the hostile Congress for the good of the country. He declared that he would be at war with Congress when asked by a reporter nearly the same question on Wednesday about the prospect of endless GOP investigations into his administration, and Biden said that he would work with Congress and that he had no control over what Republicans would try to do, and that he was there to serve our country. Now, the follow-ups are tough because those chosen reporters made sure that they took up as much time as possible with their questions. Now, unfortunately, some of them were inane or insipid, Steve Holland from Reuters being a notable exception. More than 90 other reporters in the room had no input, but Biden criticized the press for crucial reporting errors in the run-up to the midterm election and clearly enjoyed the banter with those who had made those errors. And he fed their egos while subtly making fun of them as he did so. He is not Donald Trump, but Biden has a sense of humor and a deft touch that I've seen him employ many times over the years as he eviscerates those who put him off. He did that on at least 2 occasions on Wednesday. Now, the highlight of the afternoon was when Biden was asked if he had any plans to investigate Elon Musk after his acquisition of Twitter. Without directly saying yes, Biden said he would definitely support examining Elon Musk and his multiple business interests and his interaction with other countries, but I couldn't help but ask, but how? Although I wasn't favored to be on that list, he took one. Oh, there are a lot of ways he responded with a hint of glee. Now, I wonder if Elon Musk soiled himself when he heard this response. Biden admitted he might enjoy the spectacle of Trump and the Satanists beating each other up, as if they both vie for the Republican nomination for 2024, as will I. He described the potential wrestling match as fun to watch, and no fucking kidding, someone's gonna sell tickets to this, and probably Trump. He's already selling greeting cards, t-shirts, hats, wine glasses, footballs, placemats, and Christmas ornaments, along with raffling tickets to see him perform. Trump is a regular sideshow freak with a fascist dog whistle who makes his followers howl. Now, the one question that we always wonder with Biden, and Biden faced it truly, and it mattered for the American politics, other than the implied threat dropped on Musk's doorstep, was when Holland asked whether he intended to run for a second term. Biden said yes, he intends to run on it, and he did intend to, but looking at his wife, who sat in the first row watching the press conference, added that he'd like to get a week off during the holidays and make a final decision. with the aim of announcing his intentions in the early part of 2023. As it turns out, Biden is seriously considering the question at the beginning of this column. The bottom line is that no, the Democrats didn't get slaughtered, but they had a tough time fielding the decent candidates against misanthropic and fascist competitors who openly defied the Constitution and campaigned on destroying Medicare and Social Security. You have to wonder how tired Biden is of all this, and how much he's got left for a second term. But then again, when a reporter pointed out that a good 2/3 of the country are not in favor of his policies, he doubled down and said he still intends on running. He says, "Watch me," he said, and we are. Now, if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.